So the purpose of the Zoom call is to talk, sort of continue the conversation that have taken place on pedestrian safety on Cumberland um, over several weeks. And I'll let Andrew talk about it a bit more. So Andrew talked to many residents on Cumberland, but also residents from other streets who use Cumberland, and got a feel of what the issues are and what the different uses are and concerns are. And I thought it would be useful to have this conversation this evening um, as follow up to some ideas that Andrew shared with me um, after his sort of tours of Cumberland. Um, and one of the ideas was to see whether it would be practical to have a pedestrian walkway on Cumberland in lieu of a sidewalk as a possible way to improve pedestrian safety and accessibility, because we're trying to achieve both. And so we have asked the traffic group, uh, uh, which is a consultancy that specializes in um, pedestrian safety, traffic safety issues, to look into this as an option. But before they get too deep into ideas and proposals and designs and all of that, I thought it would be better that the traffic group hear from Somerset residents and get a sense from the residents sort of what the issues are that they would like to talk about and provide that feedback to the traffic group. So Paul Dorr is here from TTG. But before I give the floor to Paul, I'm going to ask Andrew to summarize a bit what he heard over several weeks. I think when he can go into the details of how many residents that have participated in these conversations, and how we that is how we have come to where we are today. Um, and as I said, this is, as you can see, this is not a council meeting. This is not there is no, some of you might ask, is there a proposal? There is no proposal. There is no presentation. The traffic group has no presentation to make tonight. This is a listening session, and to hear about from residents before we have the traffic group really come with some specific ideas. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew, and then I will ask Paul to talk about sort of what they have seen from their studies. They've done traffic counts, and they've spent quite a bit of time on Cumberland and the surrounding streets, and they've got data on traffic flow and so on and so forth. But first, I want to ask Andrew, and then Paul, then we'll open it up. And so the easiest would be if you could, when after Andrew and Paul have spoken, if you could raise your hand virtually, then I can call on you, and that way we can keep it as an orderly meeting and get through, of course, everyone's gave everyone a chance to speak. So, Andrew, over to you first.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Lewis. I live 5525 Trent Street. And so I wanted to just echo what and just reflect a little bit on what Mayor Khanna has discussed. So in March, I started inviting neighbors to walk the kind of lower Cumberland section together, not to debate, not to persuade, but really just to observe. And over the next 6 weeks or so, roughly 30 neighbors joined one or more of these walks. Sometimes they were organized. Sometimes they also happened when people were walking dogs or just kind of conversations on the street corner. And was what surprised me was not that we reached a consensus, because we didn't. Some people preferred the status quo. Some people preferred one-way traffic. Some looked at ideas about painted pedestrian lanes. Others focused on parking sidewalks, different combinations, right? What emerged, though, and what I thought was interesting, was what I had hoped for but couldn't predict. And that is, we as a group became better at seeing the place together. As we walked from Bolton Crest, which is the top of the hill on Cumberland, down through what I referred to as Blunden Junction, and then Quan Crossing, and eventually down to what I came to call the sidewalk of accepting less, we found ourselves noticing that stuff that's always been there: how kids move, how buses move, how the trucks move, how the tree canopy changes the experience of the street, how the sidewalk, where the sidewalk ends, where people naturally cross, whether there's a crossing there or not, where trails begin, where visibility changes, and where the geometry changes everybody's behavior. So along the way, we developed names for these places, not because they matter, but because it gives us a new language to start talking about shared geography. And over time, then what ends up happening is we stopped looking at this area like a single sidewalk problem, and it started to look more like a living system. One where the streets and water and trees and schools and trails and neighbors and everyday routines are all interacting. It doesn't give us the answer, but it gives us better questions. And so one of the ideas that came up was this, as the mayor described, a painted pedestrian walkway from essentially the Xander's house down to the end of Cumberland. Not because anybody believes that this is going to be the permanent solution, but because a small reversible experiment might help us learn something before making more permanent solutions. So other ideas have emerged: one-way traffic or timed one-way traffic during school hours or something like that, changes to the parking, geometry improvements, better coordination among everybody who uses the corridor. The point, though, here is that they're all experimental and they're all reversible. So no one person arrived with the solution. It's that these ideas began to generate from a bunch of people looking at the same place together. So that's why I think tonight matters, because our community brings something that no outside consultant can bring, which is years of lived observation along Lower Cumberland. But the traffic group brings something that the residents of this town don't have: engineering expertise and experience from many communities facing exactly these same problems. So my hope tonight is that we don't choose between these two forms of knowledge. Instead, we bring them together. So because I believe that we've reached a point now where richer understanding of what Lower Cumberland is has been achieved, and now we have an opportunity to discuss and discover what it can become. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And I think I just want to read, before I turn to Paul, I want to reiterate one important point, and that is one of the things that Andrew and I, when we were taking stock of all of this, we agreed was that whatever ideas we come up with should be something that would be functioning as a pilot, as something that's easily reversible if the pilot doesn't work. I don't think that, given all the complexities, and many of you, I'm sure we'll talk about this, doing anything that is irreversible is really not on the cards. I think we want to try, test, and if it doesn't work, adjust, abandon, whatever it is. But the key thing is, we want to try to identify something that is testable, and easily we can easily adjust or reverse. So with that, Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you to give us your thoughts on sort of some of the things that Andrew has talked about. Go ahead, Paul.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Paul with the traffic group. Um, the mayor and EJ and I, we walked the community actually a few times. Once when before the mayor was mayor, and more recently we walked and we started talking about the possibility of converting the two-way Cumberland Avenue to a one-way street system, and looking at the ability to either provide a painted walkway, either on the north side or the south side. With the north side, we would basically shift the existing parking away from the northern edge and put a 3-foot walkway essentially behind the parking spaces. And of course, during the day when the parking is not there, that striped area would still be located along the northern side where folks walking the dog or just out walking or even riding a bike could be in that designated area, where the one-way traffic, again, the one-way traffic scenario would be where folks would be driving from Devon Street and then heading towards the school. Seems like the proper way of looking at the one-way scenario. Our office is reviewing that, and we're working on plans, and those plans should be somewhat completed this week. One of the problems with having parallel parking adjacent to a small pedestrian walkway is you're relying on those parkers who may not be used to parallel parking staying out of that 3-foot painted area. So one of the things that I'm getting pushback in my office is, from a liability standpoint, if you have a parallel parker not used to parallel parking, a lot of folks are used to pulling into their driveway. When that vehicle is trying to get into a 7-foot wide parking area, he or she may encroach into that 3-foot area. And whether you have a person walking a dog or a bicyclist traversing in either direction, we're trying to limit liability for the village and, of course, for the traffic group. So we are weighing out that alternative. And it may be that we just put the striped area on the southern side, leave our parking on the northern side where those parallel parkers are not interacting with the striped out pedestrian area. So we're developing those plans, and they will be somewhat completed this week, and how we make that, how we accomplish that with signage and pavement markings.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So I think it's a good time for residents to sort of ask their questions and give feedback on some of these ideas. Obviously, there are many things here that we have to sort of think through. The north side, the south side. I mean but there's also this whole question of what the implications are of one-way traffic. It's in my mind, it's not a non-trivial issue, and I think that. But I'm going to now just sort of open up. I mean, obviously, I have a lot of questions, but this is an opportunity for residents to go first. So, anybody want to go first with questions? Debbie, go ahead, please.
Debbie, you're muted.
Debbie, you're still muted. You can't unmute. EJ, do you want to see if either you or AI has gone berserk?
Yeah,
Okay.
I am looking.
All right. In the meantime, Debbie, why don't we come back to you once we've sorted that out? I see that Mark Clapper, I don't know whether Margie's with you, but Mark, please go ahead.
Hi.
And can you hear me? Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for the presentation and information. I wondered, when you talk about making Cumberland one-way, at least temporarily, and I think I heard you say one-way, what I call up the hill, how that impacts beyond Surrey, if at all, which is currently one-way in the opposite direction during school hours.
You mean Warwick?
No, from
In front of
Warwick
the
to
school.
from Warwick
Yeah,
to
and
Surrey.
Surrey still both two directions, but yeah, Warwick becomes, yes.
No, sorry. Let me
Yeah,
I misspoke. The part of Cumberland from the school and Warwick to Surrey is
yeah,
one way during school hours in the morning, in the afternoon, in the opposite direction that you're talking about.
exactly right. Yeah,
Would
yeah.
that stretch of Cumberland be impacted by the temporary measures, or probably not?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Paul, basically, as you might have seen, the current flow of traffic during school drop-off is to come up Warwick, take a left on Cumberland, and as Mark says, exactly in the opposite direction of a uphill or eastbound one way. Currently, it's
Correct.
westbound one way during school drop-off.
Correct. So we do have traffic counts for all the roads within the village, and we will look at the volume of traffic again from the school heading west. Again, and we'd have to look at the traffic volumes to make sure that the street system can handle that redistributed traffic. So we are looking at that as well.
I guess one comment I had on Mark's observation is that would that suggest that the if we were to have this pilot, that the pedestrian walkway would only start west of Surrey, right? In other words, since there already is a sidewalk on
Correct.
the stretch of Cumberland between Warwick and Surrey, then having a pedestrian walkway on that stretch of Cumberland would seem to be redundant.
Correct. We would merge, so our temporary or our painted pedestrian path west of Surrey would merge back into existing sidewalk towards the east, towards the school. We wouldn't need to stripe anything east of Surrey.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Mhm.
Debbie, how's it going there?
All right, got it.
Right.
Figured it out on my own. Because I'm really more of a visual person, are there any pictures that show what you're talking about? You know, any mock-ups that show that the road would look one way or the other, where the striping would be? Because I really didn't follow that, but that's on me, probably not on anybody else. So if you don't have anything, I'm sure Rohit will show me, explain it to me another time.
I do, if the mayor's okay with me pulling up a plan to show that exact design, I'm happy to.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Okay.
Recognizing that you're still debating it internally and you haven't come back to us with a final, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I need to share my screen, sorry. Let's see.
Jay?
You should be able to.
Yep. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So on, let me make sure I get a drawing thing here, highlight. So you got Devon here on the west. So that would be one way away from Dorset. Again, there's no parking today. And that is a two-way street today, and it's very narrow. So by eliminating, the southbound movement, it makes this intersection much safer. Today there was, prior to our first phase, there was some issues with sight lines at the intersection, and some of the signage kept getting hit for the right turns. So having a northbound maneuver here only would allow us to stripe a small walk area designated for peds or bikes along Devon. I can zoom in on Cumberland here. So we have our, get out of that mode there. So we have our speed humps located, the black rectangles. So what this shows is we're doing a 3-foot, so keep zooming in here. So we're doing like a 3-foot walkway. And again, it would be striped out along the northern side, and that's the 3-foot there. We would have our 7-foot parking lane with parking spaces, again, as they are today. And that would leave us a eastbound 1 lane, because again, today it's 2-way. You have to yield to your opposing traffic. So this simplifies the movements, and it's not a very high volume road in the scheme of other roads in the village. So when we get down to the intersection here at Surrey, we would install do not enters, we install stop signs, and basically at this point, our temporary in the road pedestrian path would continue, and then it would go on to the existing sidewalk east of Surrey. Again, we would have our crosswalk connections, and again, we would maintain east of Surrey would stay exactly like it is. So when we talk about traffic from the school during those restricted times, our traffic westbound here, sorry for my drawing abilities in this program, but so everyone here would have to make a left on Surrey, and our stop traffic eastbound, everyone this way would have to make a right turn on Surrey. And we would look at those volumes for those peak hours and determine if Dorset can handle at Surrey those. And again, we're hatching out those things. But this is our current plan. There may be a scenario, like I said earlier, where we keep our parking, zoom in a little bit more, keep our parking in its current position, and we just stripe our walkway on the southern side. That way, when people are parallel parking, they're not dealing with trying to stay out of the walkway. Again, from a liability standpoint, we have to be careful that we're not causing issues. We have issues today with 2-way traffic, and again, with pedestrians and bicyclists in the unmarked pavement today with the parked cars and 2-way traffic. So I think at the end of the day, again, this is something temporarily we're going to try to really see if this makes a safe area for pedestrians and dog walkers and bicyclists where they are not walking on in the traffic. I'd be happy to keep this up and go.
Great, thanks, Debbie. Did you want to come up with questions now that you've seen the visual? Now that you've had visual aids?
No, thank you. This was very helpful to me. I appreciate it.
So I think Paige was next. Go ahead, Paige.
Okay, I can't see whether I've taken off my microphone because now I see the map, but I hope you can hear me. I just wanted some clarification that when I was taking my notes, Andrew, you were mentioning the painted pedestrian walkway, the 1-way versus timed 1-way, and where the parking would be and stuff. And I guess I'm a little unclear, were they all in one or different ones? And if there is a hierarchy or priority of like what would be first pilot in this potential plan? Does any of that make sense?
I'm not sure I fully understood the question, but
Okay,
maybe
so are we
maybe
doing a
Maybe if
hierarchy?
Paul does, I'll let him answer.
Are we doing a different, potentially three different pilots of
No.
first just painted walkway?
No,
Different pilots. No.
Okay,
Yeah, go
all
ahead,
right.
Paul.
we would recommend it's either we stripe uh, a pedestrian area on the southern side or on the north side behind the existing parking. It's either one or the other. I don't think we're going to try one and switch to the other and see how it goes. Um, the the two alternatives that we're reviewing is one, either the pedestrians are going to be protected by the parallel parking spaces, which will cause a liability issue with those parkers,
Right.
going into the walkway or the pedestrian flow, or we put it on the south side where it's separate from the parking that's already there. Again, the I think the great thing at the end of the day is we're eliminating a traffic movement in one direction, and that will simplify things where at least if you are walking along the street and you're walking your dog, you only have traffic coming from the west. So everyone's heading towards the school. And if you're in the designated area and we're doing something that's really making that pedestrian area stand out, especially at nighttime, at the end of the day, we are in a safer environment. And that's our goal. And that was our goal when we were walking the neighborhood, a couple of weeks back.
Thank you, Paul. I have Vanessa next.
Hi. All right. So it took me a while to get on, so I missed almost all the explanation, but I think I'm caught up, except what is the one? I am on the north side of Cumberland, where the parking is currently. Is one of the suggestions to continue parking on our side of the street, but to have it be halfway in the middle of the street? I didn't understand. Is it only striping it against the curb, or is it, where do you park?
So it's either going to be, so if you're on the north side, we may, if you currently parallel park out in front of your house today, you'll still do that. It's just going to be slightly moved out 3 feet, and we're going to paint a walkway between the car and the edge of road on the north side.
Oh, okay. So I have always parked parallel on the street. My husband parks in the driveway as a rule, and my car has been scratched by debris from gardener's trucks twice. I mean, already. So if the car is 3 feet out further
Yeah, but
into
we
the
are
street,
we're trying to eliminate one flow of direction traffic.
yeah,
So
no,
your
I get
car
it.
may be damaged. I mean, of course I wasn't there, but your car may have been damaged when two cars were trying to pass each other.
No, I was watching it. It was one truck.
Okay. So
So
I mean, sorry, Vanessa, are you done?
yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
only concern.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, we're trying to ensure safety for parked cars. Needless to say that if that truck had hit a human being, it would have been much worse. Mark.
Thank you. I've lived on Cumberland for 35 years, so when I hear people talk about pedestrian safety on Cumberland, I just wonder what they're talking about. I have never seen anybody get hurt on Cumberland Avenue except for the sledders, and we've taken care of that issue. Vanessa raises a terrific point. By narrowing the street, you're simply going to make it more difficult for people to walk on the street. These landscaping trucks come by, and even if they don't scrape Vanessa's car, if anybody is not walking on that so-called safe zone 3 feet, they just have to jump out of the way. You're going to make the street more dangerous. The convenience factor I've not heard about. Vanessa can go either way to get to her house. I know Bill Hanlon, Phyllis are on the call. You're going to force them to go all the way around the block. and you're going to create a lot more traffic on Dorset. And I don't know if anybody on Dorset's on the call, but I think if I lived on Dorset, I would not be happy by increasing the flow on Dorset. I don't think that, I appreciate what Andrew has done, but I don't think that that is a sufficient survey of the people who are going to be affected on Cumberland for what's happening. I don't think that anybody on Cumberland who's lived here for 35 years or less has seen any problem that we have. In fact, it's the opposite. I think it's people enjoy walking in the street and going back and forth. It's not dangerous. And on the other hand, by increasing the flow on Dorset, you're going to make it more dangerous and you're going to make it more difficult. Dorset is a very difficult street to begin with because of hiding behind parked cars in order to let other cars go by. So, I wonder, I heard about the idea of no one person has arrived at the solution. Well, there's not a problem. And so I just don't understand why we're doing all of this. And I appreciate your asking for input, Mr. Mayor. I would ask that you ask for additional input. Actually go out and ask for all of the people who live on Cumberland and all of the people who live on Dorset, their opinion before you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to let Paul, as a technical expert on pedestrian safety, speak to the question of is this a safe option? I think there's an important point here, which is whether after accounting for the parking space and the 3 feet for pedestrians, how much width will be left for trucks? To me, I think that's an important practical point. Paul, if you can, I'm like Debbie. I'm also, well, to be honest, I'm worse than Debbie. Even when I look at this, I can't figure out, what is wide and what is narrow here. But I do have this question about whether, will this be wide enough for construction vehicles, delivery vans, and so on. But I will come back to that because a lot of other people are waiting for their turn to speak. Barbara Condos.
Hi. Do you want me to? Okay, there's my video too. My question is the 2 steps. There are 2 steps down at Surrey and Cumberland. And so would the sidewalk go to those steps and then go in the street? Or does this painted sidewalk go from the school all the way down? Right now, I just walk down a driveway because the 2 steps are not easy for me to navigate. So what happens to the 2 steps? And how far would this pedestrian sidewalk extend? Would it be from the school all the way down to Devon Lane? Or would it just be from the Surrey intersection down to Devon Lane? And then what would happen to the 2 steps?
Okay, Paul, you want to take the questions from Mark London and from Barbara together?
Sure. So the ADA issue where the steps are is right here. This
Right.
This existing sidewalk goes all the way down to this point. So we can make a connection again where our test pilot here can make a connection here, and that's why we're showing a shift here. So we'll use all this existing sidewalk down to 4807, this address here. So I think that answers your question. This intersection is not ADA compliant, and I pointed it out in earlier studies, and I know Dewberry addressed it in some of their studies.
Yeah, but I think that Paul, the issue we have is that this proposal for the pedestrian doesn't. It still requires anybody coming on westbound on Cumberland going to southbound on Surrey,
Correct.
still to cross at that as you say, non-compliant intersection. And I guess Barbara's question is, and to be honest, yeah, just to give you feedback on Dewberry looked at this, but unfortunately, Dewberry's conclusion is that addressing the steps there would require quite a lot of engineering work, going back at least two houses on Cumberland, and I think both of those, at least one of those, has a retaining wall there. So our conclusion was that fixing the problem of those steps created even a bigger headache and a very, very great expense of the retaining walls, plus at least a couple of trees might have to come down. So this Barbara, just to answer your question, solving this problem of the non-compliant steps there is quite complex, because it would require us to do sort of engineering and construction work that would be pretty difficult, with the retaining walls, just getting the grade ADA compliant and so on. I'm sure, Paul, you know better. So I guess the question I had is that, is there a way in which that can be addressed in your thinking at all? But anyway, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Okay. So in most studies, when engineering companies do studies, especially large studies, there's always the issue of a no build, expense and inconvenience. Like a few people said, if you don't have issues, you don't have pedestrians complaining about the traffic, or I know you don't have speed issues based upon my previous speed studies, but I'm not there every day, and pedestrians could encounter, whether all your residents think it or not, I'm sure there's maybe some residents on the line here that could say, hey, they are concerned about their safety when they walk their dog or when they walk through the neighborhood. Not everybody in Cumberland is the folks out there on Cumberland. So you can do a no build, which is, just like proposed sidewalks within your right of way, you would lose trees. So you have the alternative of lose trees and provide a good sidewalk outside of the roadway, or not doing it. And that may have occurred and you decided not to. One other alternative that we could look at is, your residents along the north side and along the south side of Cumberland, they have driveways, they have garages. We could actually eliminate on-street parking along Cumberland Avenue and and again, we may have folks that don't want to do that, and look at just providing a pedestrian area along with still maintaining a one-way wider lane. That could work as well, but you're going to lose some parking on street.
Before I have Phyllis next, and then I have Ellen Globakar. But let me just before I go to Phyllis, can you just come back to this question of the width and trucks?
Yes. So in order to provide a parking lane, the bare minimum would have to be 7 foot wide. In order to at least have a pedestrian path 3 foot wide, we would end up with like 11 or 12 foot one-way lane. And again, at the end of the day, a one-way direction eastbound 11 or 12 foot lane is better than a two-way with a slightly wider through lane at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks. Phyllis, and then Ellen.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm echoing, but let me come back.
Phyllis, do you have two phones on at the same time? Because there's a bit of an echo.
I don't know why I'm echoing. Sorry.
You want to disconnect and reconnect in the meantime, and then I'll come back to you.
If she mutes one, the other may work.
So Okay, Phyllis, I'll come back to you just like we did to, once Debbie sorted out, we came back to Debbie and just hopefully you can sort yours out as well. Ellen, over to you. And then after that, it's Chris.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live on the corner of Dorset and Devon Lane, and my only exit out of my garage is Devon Lane. And are you suggesting that I would have to turn right and drive all the way up Cumberland and then go down a different street and come back around to exit?
I'm sorry, you have this house or the other side? This house, correct?
I'm not seeing any.
She's on the corner of Dorset and Devon.
Oh,
Not Surrey, Devon.
No, you're
all the way
you're
down the hill, all the way down
And
the hill.
there are 4 driveways
Yeah.
that are on Devon Lane.
She's on the what would be the northeast corner of Dorset and Devon with the driveway garage on Devon.
So the answer is correct. Anyone on Devon, anyone on the Cumberland would have to make that clockwise maneuver to Surrey to exit the community, yes.
Okay.
So that
I think that gives me my answer.
Paul, this is Andrew Lewis speaking again from Trent. And Ellen, this is not what I would say is that these remain plans to be discussed. That would not be the solution that would be envisioned. And I've noticed that issue because it's you, the folks across the street, and there's at least one more
2 more. There's 2 more.
driveway that. Yeah, so there would have to be an engineering solution for that. So maybe the one way doesn't actually begin until all of the driveways are accommodated, so that you and those people would be able to exit on Devon Lane, not have to drive all the way around.
Well, one other issue that would need to be looked at is that Devon Lane is barely wide enough for 2 cars, let alone a car and a truck. And people constantly go into my driveway to let other people pass. And I don't know how I would even back up with all the traffic coming in to do like a morning drop off or any other time. Get out of my driveway, even to go, if I had to go to Cumberland, because the cars would just keep coming.
Yeah, and I think Paul, and I think Ellen, this is where the traffic. So this is where all of this begins to be. This is a set of proposals, a set of preliminary ideas, and now it's time to start pulling the data, starting to get the understanding of, are these possible? What are the trade-offs? And this is where the experimental reversible component becomes the coin of the realm.
Right.
Okay, I have Chris Borick next. And then after that, I'll see if Phyllis is back on again. Chris, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate you guys putting effort into this. I have a series of questions. I've written them down. I'll try to get through them quickly. I don't want to forget. And I can even share my notes, but my notes are imperfect. First category is kind of where are we in the process? And I want to echo what Mark London said. I recognize your face. I didn't know your name until now. But it seems like we're solving a problem that isn't really there. It seems like there's some sort of solution, but there's no real evidence that I've heard during any of these conversations over a series of months that there's any real safety concerns or anything like that. I think Paul even said that there's not even high speed on the road. And I think I echo that. I live on Lower Cumberland, 4823, bottom right on the north side. And it's just evident that that's one of the most pleasant walking streets around by sitting on the porch on a Sunday morning and watching people walk up and casually you have a family of kids and bikes and all ages going fast and slow. And it's not most of the time it's a super pleasant place to walk and safe. There may be in theory, I understand that there might be issues around school time, but I walk my daughter up there all the time, and I know other people do, and I haven't seen it, and so, it feels like we're spending a lot of time on kind of solutions, and I appreciate the effort of trying to do reversible studies and trying to get some sort of consensus. And Andrew, I appreciate what you're doing there, but I would, I really, this is like the third or fourth time one of these we've had, and why don't we start with some study of if there's a problem or not, so we know what we're responding to? Because it feels like there's a lot of effort being put into this without understanding kind of what solution we're trying to get at. So one specific question: is there any studies or any systematic complaints of any traffic or safety concerns? If there are, I haven't heard of it. It'd be great to hear about it. There's also just the process of this, right? What do we I didn't know about this until an email this morning, 6 p.m. short notice. And that seems like what happened before. We're just not
Sorry,
hearing
Chris,
about.
I want to interrupt you here. There was a town announcement last Thursday. So I really
Okay,
want to
I
just
missed it.
reiterate, as the one responsible for the administration of the town, residents, you get the town announcements. If you don't get the town announcements, please contact the town manager and make sure your
I
email is on.
I appreciate the interruption. I
The
appreciate
town
the
the town
clarification.
announcements were and they were last Thursday. So so these are announced in advance. It was, Andrew did the extra help by sending out his email on to a dedicated email distribution list, but the town did announce. So I really want to, and we've, I've made it very clear. The process here is we are seeking, and to respond to what Mark said, this is the opportunity for people to provide input. There is no proposal on the table. But this is not the third or the fourth. This is only the second time. The first time was when we had the discussion in December. So I want to be very clear about the process. The process here is, this is community engagement time. It's the time to give inputs from all residents and to hear from everyone. This is not a town council meeting. There is no proposal on the table. The traffic group, in response to my request, based on the conversations with Andrew, has been giving some thought to this, and everything everyone has said is very valuable input and feedback for Paul and his team to think through. The concerns about parking, the width of trucks, the question about one way, as Ellen pointed out, that you're the last house on that last one way. So the question of overflow traffic into Dorset, Surrey. All of these, I think, are things that I know that Paul and his team will want to think about, and it's really important that they hear that. But so I really hope that we can talk about substantive concerns.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mayor. I appreciate you saying that. But a notice on Thursday for the people who live down there, and an email, it's not sufficient notice. I think you got to make a little more effort for the people who are affected by this directly to just make sure. Vicky Bloston, for one, my next door neighbor, has put a ton of time and effort trying to coordinate people and get them in. I noticed she's not on the call. I was kind of surprised to hear that. I don't think it's fair.
This. Vicky and I have been communicating about this for more than 2 weeks. It's absolutely, we have, as soon as we had the dates confirmed, there was no, and Vicky was one of those that I reached out to early, precisely for the reason you said, that, because she has put so much time and effort into this. I reached out to Vicky very early on to say we were going to have this. She's not on, and I'm sorry about that, but there has been, and I appreciate if you think that Thursday is not good enough for a Monday. I appreciate that, and I accept that point. But just to be clear, this is not the end of the process. This is the beginning of the process. Yeah, but please go ahead.
We had a beginning of, like, I don't remember what it was, 6 months ago, and I don't think it was well noticed. Thursday is better than Monday morning. I appreciate that. But if you look at our emails, we get a lot of stuff and trying to find the exact one. I would go back to the other comment. I do think that the people on Cumberland should be given a little more notice and wait to try to weigh in on this stuff. And I don't on Lower Cumberland where it's affected. And I also think if we are going to put stuff, listen, I know this is largely volunteer jobs and people are doing this, but it is to jump on a meeting and not kind of have drawings shared, not have something shared in advance. It does have a big effect on the people and have it a little bit better spelled out. I think we deserve a little more. And I know, it stinks to kind of have to be waiting, reading all the emails, wondering when this is going to come up again, and trying to rally quickly to be prepared for something like this. I just think it's not easy for you to notice everybody and everything that's coming up, but this issue in particular, I know that has a lot of people that are not happy with how the processes work. So I want to share that. So those are the main comments oh, wait, one other one. Sorry. Just on the idea. My observation, maybe there's studies, maybe you can speak to this, Paul, but part of what keeps people from driving too fast is the two-way and the traffic. And I just worry if you have a one-way, people are going to zoom on down the street because they're not worrying about cars on the other side and having to kind of balance. And that's just part of living on the street. You got to kind of balance those things. So I think, I don't know what studies there are. I have a feeling it's not very specific to this very quiet little road, end of the road that we have. But my gut feeling is one way is going to make people go faster than not. Anyway, sorry. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And of course, we're definitely very respectful of the fact that Cumberland residents should be given every opportunity to weigh in. As I said, that this is precisely the purpose of this meeting, I'm looking back. This meeting was actually announced first on July 16th, and then again on July 23rd. So I really do feel that the town has done its utmost to give advance notice. I appreciate the fact that everybody gets a lot of emails, as do I. If you have better ideas for how the town can communicate, we're definitely open to every idea. I want to just come back to one point that both you and Mark have raised, and that is this question of what's the problem here. I think it's fair to say there are different perspectives on the safety of Cumberland. I certainly walk on Cumberland a lot, and I don't think it is safe. The town council received a letter from at least a half a dozen residents, all on Cumberland, who asked for, at that time, a sidewalk, which is why we had that whole discussion in December. So I think there is definitely concern from more than a few residents about the issue of pedestrians and vehicles sharing the same space. I don't think there is any doubt that it's not safe. There's more than sufficient empirical evidence that when pedestrians and vehicles are sharing the same asphalt, there tends to be a less safe environment for the pedestrian. We know who wins in that battle. The fact that nothing has happened for 35 years, well, that's great. I guess the one data point that would then satisfy is that when we do have an accident, then I guess that's when we'll have the data point. But I want to really ask Paul, as the expert on safety issues. I mean, do you think that what does the professional experience that you have with respect to Cumberland? I mean, is the traffic volume so low and so slow that actually it is reasonably safe, as some have said, or not? But I want to come back to so I want to just hold that question in your mind, Paul. I want to come back to it because there are a lot of other people who have asked for the mic, and so I'm going to go back to Phyllis. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Mayor, can you hear me? Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I'm.
Hi, it's Vicki Blueston. I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to say I've been on the call. I just
Okay.
couldn't figure out how to mute myself, so I am here, and I would like to talk when it's my turn.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vicky. I'm glad you're on. Phyllis.
Hi, I'm still echoing. I'll send an email.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still got an echo, Phyllis.
Okay, I'll send an email.
Okay. Um, Bill Hammond.
Hi, Mayor, we haven't met. Bill Hanlon, I've lived in Cumberland at the bottom of the hill since 1993. I've had years of observation instead of just walking the street a few times. I've had two children that have walked 5 years each up and down to the Somerset Elementary School. I've walked dogs up and down that hill until they passed away. And I'm sorry you don't feel safe walking on Cumberland, but I share the view of Mark and Chris. I've walked that hill in that street for 35 years. I run it. As Paul mentioned, one of the great attractions of Cumberland is how little traffic we do have. And I do think that this is a group that's looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. I mean, you say there are no proposals. I've heard 4 proposals on this call. So there's certainly proposals that are being discussed. And you talk about giving notice to people. I can't take down a tree without talking to 5 neighbors around me. So it would be easy to send a notice to everybody who lives on Cumberland that this is something that people are considering. But I've got no notice of this until I heard something on the other day on the street. I just think that, and the notion of one-way traffic just seems to me nuts. You're gonna force everyone on Cumberland to drive a full loop around instead of heading one way to Little Falls and the other way to Connecticut. You're going to double the traffic of residents on Cumberland. And as Mark pointed out, we're going to loop around Dorset. So you're going to increase all the traffic on Dorset. I've heard that you don't feel personally safe, but as Chris and Mark pointed out, there hasn't been an incident on Cumberland in at least our memory, which goes back 35 years. And I just think it's crazy that you're already thinking about eliminating. I mean, if you look at our street, I'm fortunate I've got a big driveway. I can park a lot of cars. Not many of my neighbors can. Many of them have in and out driveways. And the street is usually full of parking. You take that parking away, it's going to create a real nuisance for those people that don't have driveways like me. So I really think that before hiring the group you hire engineering groups to perform services. So of course they're going to propose things that they want to put in place. And I think before you ever got to that point, you might have surveyed the residents and decided whether there was really a problem or not. And I don't think you have.
I appreciate that, Bill. But there are people who have said it's a problem. So we're trying to find a balance between those who say there is no problem and those who have said there is a problem. And I've heard.
Based on what, though? Talking to 20 people? Who have you talked to? You didn't survey anybody on Lower Cumberland. So who are you talking to? Who's making the decision that we need to fix this? A group of 10? A group of 20? I don't understand.
Well, Mark, Bill, I think, as I said, we received letters. Andrew said he has spoken, he spoke to many residents. So we are trying to find the balance. But, I don't want to get caught up on the pros and cons because as I said, there is no proposal. These are ideas that are being bounced around and precisely.
Mayor, we just heard 4 different proposals. There are proposals.
Let me
hire
move
somebody
on. I
to
appreciate
give you a proposal.
Yeah. Katie.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Yes. Okay, great.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
So I am at 4815 Cumberland, which is right in the middle of the street. I have 3 little kids, very happy in the neighborhood, very happy the way it is. I just wanted to raise a couple of concerns as a mom of 3 little ones. So my biggest concern is about the proposed walkway. My kids park in front of our house. We don't have room in the driveway for our minivan. It's a very small driveway. We actually share our driveway with our neighbors, which is wonderful. It's fine. But as a result, we park on the street. If there were a walking path between where my kids have to get out of the car and my house, I think it could actually pose a danger. If bicyclists were going on a designated walking path fast, instead of, being able to go into the street on the other side of the cars, if they were forced to go in between the cars and my yard when my kids are getting out of the car, maybe not paying attention because they're 4 and 2, they could get hit. That's just like top of mind, one little example that potentially you're going to create more problems than you're solving by this. Another issue is that, I've heard let's do small steps, reversible steps. But if you're proposing to do a walking path in between cars and yards, you're going to substantially narrow the street. And then simultaneously, you're going to make it one way. That seems pretty drastic to me. And it seems like you're doing two things, at the same time instead of sequentially. In terms of like feelings of personal safety of whoever's walking on this street and currently feeling unsafe, I want everyone to feel safe. That's a massive priority of mine. But if you don't live on this street and you don't feel safe walking on it, then you shouldn't walk on it. The other thing, though, in terms of safety, it sounds like the steps that we have from the existing sidewalk where the sidewalk ends are a legitimate safety concern. It sounds like there have been, I just heard on this call that somebody struggles with those steps. So if that's a legitimate safety issue that more than one person's experienced, why aren't we focusing on that one instead of manufacturing sort of this sidewalk issue down the road? And I hear that engineering for that is expensive or maybe difficult, but if that's a legitimate safety problem, then that's where we should be spending our dollars, is what I would say there. And then overall, I would just echo what everyone else has said. I don't see the system not working. I see the system working. I walk on this street all the time. I walk with my 3 kids on this street all the time. I see bicyclists passing us happily. I see cars being very, very considerate. And I think that if you forced all traffic, bicycle, dogs, pedestrians into one narrow strip between cars and yards, it would genuinely make things worse. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. I mean, I appreciate again very much, I think, the very thoughtful comments you make about your concerns about safety, about the relative priority of the steps on Surrey vis-a-vis, this pedestrian walkway. But I really want to reiterate, what I really want to reiterate is, I don't think it is fair to say these are manufactured concerns. There is a letter that has come from Cumberland residents to the town council expressing concerns about pedestrian safety in Cumberland. So, and I think that one of the ways in which we can work better as a community is not to simply say that if you don't agree with something, it's manufactured. I think we have to, I fully respect the views of you, Katie, and everybody else who says that there are serious problems with some of these ideas that are being put on the table here, and I think all of those need to be considered. And as Andrew said, it is the responsibility now of the professional experts to figure out whether this is really something that we can reconcile all the different concerns. Every single one of them is legitimate. I haven't heard a single concern that, to me, doesn't make any sense. I think they all make a lot of sense. But I really would plead with everybody in the town not to be dismissive of those who have expressed concerns. And there are those, and to say, and ask who are they, and it's only one person or it's manufactured. I really would plead with everyone, please. I don't think that's fair. To be honest, and I will tell you, it's part of the reason why those who have written the letter do not participate in these calls. So, I think we'd be better off as a community by expressing exactly the specific concerns you have, but let us please not dismiss the views and concerns of those who may or may not agree with you. So that's my only plea. Is I think everything everyone has said are all very valid points that have been made, except this question of sort of nothing has been manufactured over here. So with that, I'm going to ask Kumar Vaswani.
What?
Kumar?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
And then after that, Vicky Blueston.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we
Thank
can
you.
hear you. Go ahead.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up for this forum. Uh, I don't live on Cumberland, but I do have a few questions, just a few questions and then a couple comments. One question is, will this painted sidewalk go all the way down to the end of Cumberland at the bottom of the hill to connect to that trail, that Little Falls Parkway trail? In other words, will it go past Devon down to the very bottom of Cumberland?
The answer from the traffic group is yes.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as the east side, are you saying it'll stop where the sidewalk begins, which is roughly at 4811 Cumberland, or will it go all the way up to Surrey?
No, it'll tie into the existing sidewalk at the point where we can make that connection, which is maybe 100 feet, 200 feet from Surrey. So this blue is the existing. So we're going to try to tie in that area.
No, the blue arrow is where the sidewalk, no, you're right. I'm sorry.
So it would tie in to the sidewalk somewhere west of Surrey? Is that your plan?
So let me just highlight it a different color. So this,
And then
the
someone
sidewalk
would,
ends right here. So we can try to make a connection anywhere in here. Again, we're tasked to try to look at this from a traffic volume standpoint, from parking, from pedestrian flow, from speeds. So we're looking at all these things and even circulating around down to Dorset. We will look at all these things and make a recommendation. And as Katie mentioned, a lot of the issues with doors opening and things. I have a staff of 9 or 10 professional engineers, professional traffic operations engineers. They will not let me recommend something that's going to allow the town to put themselves in a liability situation. So we are looking at all the options and trying to come up with the best solution. And even that solution could be shot down. Sorry, Kumar.
okay, thank you. So then I have a couple comments. One is that a 3-foot walkway is actually not wide enough in my view. I mean, we have 4-foot wide sidewalks in most of town, and people complain about those, people with strollers, wheelchair users. And what worries me is you're trying to find, so first of all, setting aside the issue of whether there is a problem or not, that's, an issue that needs to be discussed, but I'm worried you're finding a solution. Well, it's like a halfway solution that doesn't please anybody. I don't think 3 feet is enough, frankly. I think you need to have a minimum of a 4-foot wide walkway. The second issue is I looked at your contract and it says that you'll outline the benefits of a one-way Cumberland, but it doesn't say that you'll outline the disadvantages. And I think that contract needs to be revised, and I hope you'll look at both sides of this.
No, and that's a good point, but we'll definitely outline the pros and cons of any alternative that we give to the town.
I think the contract needs to be revised, frankly. Second issue is fire department access, because you're essentially narrowing the roadway by 3 feet, particularly at that intersection of Devon and Cumberland. And for trucks to make that turn, now you're saying it's going to be one way on Devon and then one way on Cumberland. So all fire access is basically going to be on Devon. Then they'll make the right onto Cumberland. And I worry that that's a bit of a constrained area. Now, obviously, fire apparatus is on an emergency. They're allowed to disregard signs and signals. But for all practical purposes, they're going to come in on Devon and head up the street. That intersection right there, Devon and Cumberland, is going to be very constrained for large fire apparatus making that turn. And then just in general, and this applies to large trucks as well, you're basically narrowing the street by 3 feet. So imagine you're driving up the street. Currently, you have a row of parked cars on your left as you're heading up Cumberland towards the school. Now that row of parked cars is 3 feet closer to you. And if you ask MCFRS, they'll say, we'll work with whatever you do. You know, we respect your community's, you know, interest and desire to try to make your streets safer. But in reality, and they won't complain to you, they'll complain to each other. And I have 39 years of experience with this. Firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs do not like operating in Chevy Chase Section 3 because their streets are so narrow and it's really difficult to make turns there. Now, their streets are much narrower than ours, but I do worry that you're narrowing the street, essentially the traveled part of the roadway, by 3 feet, and you got trucks that are 8 feet 9 inches wide that are going to be trying to operate on Cumberland, and I think that is going to be more of a challenge than it is now. Our streets, in my view, they're, you know, it's all relative, but when the county, you know, the county's design manual says streets are supposed to be wider than 22 feet for new subdivisions. Ours are old streets, so they're only 22 feet. Narrow it even more, and I think it's going to be a challenge. And MCFRS responds to Somerset about 60 times a year. Spread that out over about 15 streets. You know, maybe it's 4 times a year in Cumberland, but it is a risk, I think. So those are all my comments, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kumar. Next person on my list is Vicky, followed by Lucy.
Hi, everybody. First of all, there were notices sent out. EJ sent a notice in the last, maybe a week ago, about this meeting. So I just want to say there were notices more than just Andrew's notice today. But aside from that, and I've been here 67 years. I was born in this house. So I do think Katie makes a very good point about the painted walkway for her kids. But also, I think you cannot take 3 feet out of this street or 4 feet, because I've seen even when people are parking on the street, if they're like, once in a while you get people who are parked like a foot out or even 6 inches out, and the street is narrow. I would rather see, and I don't think it's practical to cut out 3 feet all the way down the street. I would rather see the street be one way, at least one way during opening and closing of school, but one way, and maybe it should be one way down the street. And I also agree with Katie that the step and the corner at Surrey and Cumberland do need to be fixed, and maybe that curve needs to be widened when the buses come down, and maybe the same thing needs to happen at the corner of Devon and Cumberland, where we do something so it's easier to widen out. And obviously, I think you cannot ban parking on this street because there's all sorts of contractors and people who have more than one car. And the other thing I'd like to ask is about bicyclists. If we make the street one way, does that include bicycles? Because bicycles, as you know, usually go down the street where the traffic goes. I don't see them going down a 3-foot walkway. You know, those are just my comments. I mean, and also the other thing everyone's talking about, there's going to be so much more traffic on Dorset. Well, either we have a lot of traffic to begin with or we don't. And I think from this call, the sense is that we don't even have that much traffic to begin with. So I'm not sure that it's going to, whether we go one way up the street or one way down the street, I don't think it's going to create that much more traffic. Again, I'm not an engineer by a long shot, but if there's not that much traffic to begin with, that it's not going to be that much of a problem, whether they're turning on Devon or they're turning on Surrey. And that's all I have to say. But I just don't see how we put 3 feet out of the road, take 3 feet out of the road all the way down and have any kind of street that you can pass on or go up or down easily. It's just too, maybe it would work on the south side, but I don't think it works on the north side if you're going to keep parking on the north side. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, and just, I mean, on the question of traffic flow, the traffic group has traffic data, so I'm sure they will go back to that and look at that as well. So next I have Matt.
What about bicycles? Can somebody just address the issue? Can we talk about a little bit? Do we really think bicycles will go on a little path, or they'll still ride in the street like they always do?
Okay, thanks. Paul, you want to address that before I move to Matt and then Lucy?
Sure. Bicyclists, they go where they want. You're correct. They probably will drive down the middle of the street, even if you sign that the bicyclist should be where the pedestrians are. So they're going to do what they want. They're going to go in the direction they want, and we cannot enforce that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Matt, and then Lucy.
Yeah, I was just curious. Well, I guess 2 parts. One, on the process. I appreciate that several people, it sounds like, wrote a letter and sent it in. But I think what a lot of people are curious to is just procedurally, like when you do that, this is the second round where the town is spending money. And it's like if I go get 5 of my neighbors to sign something and send you guys a letter, that triggers like a bunch of spending that, before anyone else gets to even agree if it's a problem, like we're already spending Somerset funds. So I was curious, maybe we should have I'm not sure if that's already published, like what triggers spending and how many people you need to agree there's a problem. And then number 2, I'm an engineer, and this is I think a lot of people have said empirical claims, and without numbers, everything is just an opinion. So I'm curious, what does the literature show when you create a configuration like this? What does the evidence say? Is there statistical evidence that shows reduction in pedestrian injuries, fatalities, and the effect of vehicle speeds and stuff like that? Curious what evidence supports that.
Paul, do you want to address that latter point?
Sure. Basically, we're removing the pedestrians out of the vehicle travel way, so we are expecting, if any, reduction in the possibility of a fatality or a vehicle accident with a pedestrian. A narrow roadway will reduce speeds naturally just because the road is narrow. Vehicles feel a sense of being enclosed, and they will naturally drive slower. As I mentioned, I have done speed studies. I know the volumes. Today, there is not a volume issue or a speeding issue, but narrowing the road, especially for one-way traffic, there is a lot of documentation. By eliminating just one flow in one direction, you've reduced a lot of the different movements at the intersections. So naturally, it will be a safety betterment at the end of the day.
But that would be in the literature, surely, right? Like the average speed in either direction from going a 2-way road to a 1-way road. What's the expected change in average speed? That was a great question earlier. It does, qualitatively, you could predict either one, but I would want to see the real data that shows what's the actual impact.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you have Matt's information. We can send that to him, or?
Yeah, I mean, why don't you send it? Why don't you send it to EJ, and we'll make sure that it gets to everyone. I'm sure others are interested in the same question because it has come up, which is the empirical aspects of this. Lucy, and then Bob Kloback.
My question is Lucy Freeman. My question is about Little Surrey. Is Little Surrey going to be one way from Cumberland to Dorset, or is it going to be 2 ways?
this flow could still be two-way, but anyone coming eastbound on Cumberland and anyone coming westbound from the school, they're all going to have to turn down Surrey. So if someone lives in this block, you could still come off of Dorset to access your home.
Okay, I was on a walk with Andrew Lewis when we talked to a neighbor who lives on the corner of Little Surrey and Cumberland, and she said that is a very dangerous corner, and that corner, any plan should try and fix that corner and make that street one way. You're not considering that.
You're talking about just have all traffic from Cumberland go southbound on Surrey towards Dorset. Well, I can
What this
certainly look at
person
that.
said, this person did not say the way, said the street should be one way. And
Okay.
since the red arrow is only going one way, I thought it was going to be one way, but you're saying it's going to be two ways.
I was just from a standpoint of showing where the traffic from Cumberland was going to turn at the same time. There's no reason that Surrey is wide enough today. We could maintain two-way traffic, at least for these residents. The same way on Devon, if the residents here are opposed to one-way traffic in this block, we could maintain two-way traffic. It doesn't have parking. We won't end up with a walkway, so we'll be back to square one where pedestrians in this area will, have potential for conflicts with vehicles. So hopefully that answers your question. Those two streets can remain two-way, and we would look at the traffic volumes to make sure that works.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you. I thought those people were going to have to add a whole lot, drive down Dorset, along Devon, up Cumberland to get off Dorset to go home. So you answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Bob Klopak and then Caroline Cooper.
Sorry, I didn't hear. Were you calling me? This is Carol.
No, Bob first, and then you, Caroline. Yep. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. I appreciate the process and the opportunity to be heard. My concern is I just hope we're not maybe solving one safety problem and creating another. Ellen, my wife, spoke earlier. We're at the corner of Dorset and Devon Lane. We have cars flying down Devon Lane all the time that run the stop sign at Devon Lane in order to make the light at Little Falls. So anything that is going to dump more traffic onto Dorset, and I think, Paul, we really need to understand the traffic counts and also the softer issues of traffic safety, is going to increase pressure to run these stop signs in order to make that light. And that creates a problem. Everybody in our family has almost been hit numerous times because it's not enough to see a car coming down the street and expecting it to stop. You have to wait for it to stop because many don't. They just fly through. The other thing is, I understand that one-way traffic may partially alleviate this problem, but as the mayor knows, we've raised concerns with the town because we've had damage done repeatedly to our fence that we had to replace for thousands of dollars, to our tree canopy that destroyed part of our tree, and most recently to a stone wall that we have that separates our property from Devon Lane at the corner of Dorset. And those damages have been caused, at least in part, by large construction vehicles and or landscape vehicles that enter Devon Lane from Dorset. And if you come and look at the property, Devon Lane is supposed to be like 17 and a half feet wide. There are spots on Devon Lane that are barely 17 feet wide. The curbs at the corner, if you make the turn from Dorset into Devon Lane, protrude into the lane. So that area to turn without going over the curb is even probably less than 17 feet. And if you have a 25-foot landscape truck and trailer or a large construction vehicle like WSSC, when there was a lot of work on Cumberland, if you're forcing all that traffic now to go one way, it's got to come down Dorset, go on Devon Lane in order to get to Cumberland. we're going to have probably more damage with people making that turn and taking out our wall or taking out trees. And we want, if anything, less traffic, because that lane was never made for truck traffic. And now it's going to get more under this proposal. So I think that needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Bob. Caroline, and then Mark after that.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate all the work and thought that's gone into this, but I, like others, have lived here. We've lived here well over 40 years, and I have never seen a problem with Cumberland in terms of walking. My 3 children walked up to Somerset daily, and I walked my dog up and down the street. I've never seen a problem. And I've also noticed that even when we were talking about sidewalks, many people walk on Cumberland and don't even use the sidewalk. So I'd like to just have a more, and that's not to negate the other comments that have been made, like by the Globa cars, the major big trucks. Paige Whitley has sent notices about the big construction trucks. There seems to be no management of when trucks are going to be on the street, and so forth. So I think this is a much bigger issue. The walking is the least of it, and I don't even think it's a concern. I wasn't. If there was a letter that was written by residents on Somerset, I didn't even know it existed. I've never seen it. I was never asked to comment on it. So I think we just, as some of you have already said, we need to have a much fuller discussion, see what the data is, what the documents are, and be able to approach this in a much more comprehensive way. And I live at the foot of Devon and Cumberland, in the back of the Globa cars. And I mean, it would be ridiculous for me, it would be horrible for me to, in the snow particularly, to have to take my car, go all the way up Cumberland, and then go down Surrey to get onto Dorset to get out. I mean, that is just something that makes no sense. I think the one thing that people haven't commented on, and I don't know if it's been looked at, Cumberland is a pass-through. So a lot, I've noticed that, and when I've walked, I've recognized cars that come from Drummond, come from other places, and they could just go Wisconsin, down Drummond, down Warwick Place, and down Cumberland and get out. It's a much easier way to do it, which I don't know if that's an issue. It would be good to get some data to see if that's contributing to traffic. But I think this is just a much bigger issue than having a painted sidewalk would address. And that's not even anything that seems to concern at least us and a lot of people that I know. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Caroline. Mark, and then Paige.
Thanks again for the time. I guess count me among the Cumberland residents for now 20 years who does think there's a problem. I didn't write a letter. I didn't send an email. I wasn't aware of any of those things. I'm just participating in this call and sharing my view. Now, I think, what's jarring to me is if you zoom out for a second, we live on Cumberland and the Warwick Alley. We have sidewalks, we have a one-way street, and we have a completely closed alley. So I heard a couple of people say, it would be quite inconvenient to have to turn left or right at certain times. I get it. We live on an alley. I can't turn left or right at certain times of the day. We're just stuck, all in the name of pedestrian safety. And I hear people saying, just a couple dozen feet down the road, there's no pedestrian issue at all. That doesn't ring true to me. Of course, there's a pedestrian issue, and we don't need a study to show that pedestrians and cars don't belong in the same space. Now, I don't know what the answer is. Frankly, this proposal doesn't strike me as better than the first proposal. But I think just saying no, no, no isn't going to cut it. If there is an incident we're all going to have to live with that, and we shouldn't. So I suggest we get together in problem-solving mode, acknowledging that the situation is suboptimal and that there has to be a better solution than the one we have now. But our view certainly could be colored from the limitations that we live under in the name of pedestrian safety.
Thanks, Mark. Next, I have Paige.
Hi there,
And then,
everybody.
yeah, and then there's someone who's iPhone 231. So I guess 231, you're after Paige.
I just want to reiterate what I've been hearing, that frankly, if there were no cars on Cumberland Avenue, I don't think we would be having this problem, this discussion right now. And so in trying to keep pedestrians safe, we are trying to keep them safe, I presume, from vehicles, and that is the major concern. And yet, while I feel this study is focusing on removing pedestrians from paths, making them straight, but equally important, I believe, is the consideration by the town council in what can be done to better look at, study, and perhaps regulate some of these increasing large construction trucks and other trucks. Because within the past 30, 40, or 65 years, as longer residents have made, this has been the biggest change in our community. And so I would like to have some focus put on that. And obviously those of us who have driveways off of Devon Lane, which is literally more like a DC alleyway connecting people to their driveways than a true lane like Surrey, which has a number of houses on it, as opposed to just us four. I would just like to also encourage study and looking at and possibly regulating some of these larger vehicles and increased vehicles. That is the change in our community. And just one last comment about the fire trucks. I have taken videos of fire trucks coming up and down Cumberland and making the turns on Devon Lane. Those fire trucks that are long have a guy in the back who has a steering wheel, and there are additional axles that somehow allow them to make those turns on Cumberland to Devon and from Devon onto Dorset. However, most of these larger construction vehicles that are offloading and that may have tiny forklifts and others don't have that person. It's very stiff, and more than once they've been coming up and over property trying to veer around vehicles and not allowing space for pedestrians who are jumping into grass. So that's my last comment about that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paige. Yeah, whoever is iPhone 231, you're next. And then Chris after that.
Okay, thank you. It's Jamie Kaplan from Cumberland Avenue. First, I want to thank the mayor and everyone on the call for just the opportunity that we still live in a democracy and can give feedback. So I appreciate the dialogue. And of course, we aren't always all going to agree, but we have the opportunity to share our opinion. I think what Katie said, it's been said many times, but having a pedestrian walkway by where cars are parking, would just be a hard no in terms of the safety. I'm all for any measures that can make the street safer for pedestrians. The one thing, as Matt mentioned, we're lacking data here. So we're just really making anecdotal calls about and judgment as to where we see best based on what we know. The one thing I would just want to call out, I do think having numbers of changing it to one way, how that would change the pace of traffic. But one thing I think it's important is that we look at apples to apples. And one thing that slows down the traffic here is that it's a two-way street and people have to maneuver cars going up and down. So cars pull over, they stop. No one is racing down Cumberland. So I just worry a little bit about if we have this one-way throughfare, are people then going to start racing down the street because they know it's one way, I don't have to maneuver any traffic. So I don't have the data here either, but that's something that raises quite a bit of concern to me. The other comment about construction vehicles, that to me is where the big safety concern is. There's too many trucks on the road. The trucks are often the ones who are going the fastest. And the road really wasn't built to accommodate these large vehicles. So I would really advocate for how do we restrict, how do we regulate the construction vehicles that are going down the road? And the other question I have is, it was mentioned on the call that the upper part of the street is in total disarray. So that part does have a sidewalk. So are we just going to let that continue to deteriorate to it's completely non-functional? It seems like if we're talking about dollars and resources, this should be a priority. How can we make that part of the street safe? If we need to raise funds, I mean, I understand there might be some complexities, but I think we need to have a long-term plan of having a safe sidewalk also at the top of the street. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Jamie. So I just want to before I go to Chris and then Margie, Vanessa, I see you also asked. Jamie, just to clarify, when you were saying at the top of the street, are you talking about where the steps are at Surrey?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
How it was mentioned that there's parts that are really unusable.
Yeah. Look, I just want to clarify what I said earlier. The town can certainly afford to fix those steps. I don't know if anyone at 4721 or 4719 Cumberland is on this call or not. But just as each one of you have expressed concerns about parking or getting out of your driveways or whatever, I want to be very clear that our engineer, Dewberry, our engineering consultants have said that fixing those steps will mean taking down the retaining walls. Those of you who live on Cumberland know exactly what I'm talking about. I think both those houses have retaining walls. Those retaining walls would have to be removed, rebuilt. Almost certainly one or two trees at that intersection may have to be removed. I can foresee exactly the call that the next Zoom call when we discuss this, of how residents in Cumberland will say no trees, and the homeowners on those two properties will certainly have concerns about their retaining walls coming down. Some of you have retaining walls in other parts of Cumberland as well, and you know what happens when retaining walls have to be taken down. So it's not a question. I mean, obviously it is expensive, but the town has the budget for it. But I want to be very clear, as everything all of you have said, there is no solution without trade-offs.
Yeah.
Something has to give, and at the end of the day, that means somebody has to sacrifice something for the public good. I don't know just like you, I also don't know what the answers are, and that's where we have the traffic group, as our consultants to help us think through all of these options. But I just want to be very clear what the issues are with respect to that. I think, I was the chair of the Pedestrian Safety Working Group. This was those Surrey steps was the number one recommendation of that group. Please fix those steps. It's a safety hazard. It's an accessibility problem. So I would like nothing more, having chaired that pedestrians, to have that fixed. But I also want you all to know that the trade-offs are not insignificant.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if there's a solution where it's not 100% fixed, but if there's a way to, not take down trees, not remove retaining walls, but make some repairs that would at least be an enhancement. Because I think you're right. There's never going to be the perfect solution, but maybe all of that has already been explored and exhausted. But
the steps could be repaired, yes, but replaced to make them ADA compliant. As I said, the trade-offs would be significant, and we'd have to again. I think Matt asked earlier, who do you listen to when you do things? I mean, we listen to everybody. That's what this town. The beauty of Somerset is that we listen to everyone. This is what local government and local democracy is about. No one is going to have any solutions, forced down their throats. The whole idea of this process is to listen to everyone. So. as I said, I'm happy to go back to the engineers and ask them again. But Matt, you heard it. Residents ask, now it's going to cost us a little bit of money to go back to Dewberry and say, well, can you come up with something else? I think, that's not an unreasonable ask. So with
Oh,
that,
I was curious procedurally, like how many people in general for anything, like what amount of feedback do you need to trigger spending town
well,
funds?
I
Just
think
a larger
there's
question.
no hard and fast rule. I think if a group of residents express concerns that they feel undermine their safety or their welfare, that has implications for us, the town. I think the town government, the council, and I will act on it. We'll look into it. I think that for example, the Klopak, Bob Klopak and Ellen Globakar mentioned, we received a letter from the residents in Devon Lane. That's 3 residents, but we are going to incur some cost to study how to deal with this problem. So I don't think there's a threshold. I think there's a judgment call that that your elected officials have been put in place to make as to when to act and when not to act. So uh, and you can certainly criticize this judgment call. You have every right and to do that. But
But do you actually have
that's
a list? Because you said the number one issue, is that public yet? Like the list of what are the top like 5 or 10
Yes. I mean,
safety?
all of this was submitted to the council. So all of these things are in the council documentation over the last, or whatever year it was. And this recommendation, I think, went in 2024 or early 25 to the council. So these recommendations are there and they're all public. Anything that goes to the council is public. And you can certainly ask for the letter from the residents, and EJ can send that to you. It may already be in the council website, but otherwise, as I said, anything that goes to the council is in the public information as far as you know. Okay, so let me then move on. I have Chris, Vanessa, Margie.
Thanks. Just I'll be quick. I appreciate the time again. I know it's a long night. I do appreciate that there was an email that was sent on Thursday, and but it is among, I'd say, a dozen, if not 2 dozen, in the last 10 days from Somerset. So it is hard to track, and for stuff that is especially important to people, maybe there's a better way to do it. People have been getting at that. In terms of solutions, we kind of talked about this one. Just for future discussion, it seems like there's ways to have people slow down that are not the one-way road. I thought speed bumps, turns, I saw some diagrams earlier. It just seems like we kind of got side railed on the one thing. And again, if we had an agenda with ideas ahead of time, it'd be helpful to understand what they are. But it just feels like we kind of got sidetracked on this one option. And then you're mentioning 4, but it feels like we're talking about one mainly. The other thing I just didn't hear is I think I don't like the idea of a one-way road that much. And this particular one doesn't seem great, but it seems like one way during school hours when arguably that's the time when if there are any real risks, which we can debate, that's the best time to do it, and it wouldn't be so disruptive as the rest of this. But I do wanted to go back and just one thing you said, Mayor. It feels like we've gotten a letter from 6 people, your gut intuition, and now Mark is kind of chimed in, and I know Mark for a long time. I respect his opinion. That there's a safety problem, but I really think the intuition of half a dozen plus people and not having some sort of study to really understand it is you can go from intuition and a gut, but I think you really do have to explore it and not assume that some solution is needed. I just think there has to be a little more to it before we trigger all this. And it's both money, but it's also time and angst. And I think you've heard plenty of angst over the course of this. It's just I don't I think we skipped a step on evidence-based analysis in terms of what really is safe. And I do think the people who live on the street and are there all the time should get a little more weight. And I know that there has not been a rigorous collection of input from that group. And I think that you should do that.
That's it. Thanks. Vanessa, then Margie.
Thank you. One more time. I actually was going to also raise a question about whether or not the one-way effectiveness effect could be just during school hours, but whatever. The only other comment really that I was going to make is as our street is so narrow now, when people do have driveways, and not everybody has one, just about everybody, but not everybody has a driveway. Two cars were hit in front of our house while a neighbor backed out of their driveway because it was so narrow. They didn't know what, they were new drivers, whatever. It's a limited space already, so the extra 3 feet can make a difference, but just saying that. The other thing that's been going on, for some reason, we've had so much construction in the last 3 months. And I'm home a lot, and the fire trucks and the construction trucks and the the big FedEx trucks clearly don't like that corner down at the bottom by Paige and Caroline, and they back up. So if the street is 3 feet narrower and they're backing up, I mean, it's kind of terrifying to watch every time. But I'm just throwing that out there. I understand and appreciate the desire to have an ADA compliant environment. I have 3 friends now who are in wheelchairs, and they're not electric. So I know that it would be hard to go from the house next door down to the end of the street. I mean, they couldn't do it without being in the middle of the street. I get it. I don't think that doing the painted, I'd be curious to see if the painted alley, whatever you're calling it, sidewalk on the south side of the street, leaving parking where it is now, to try it and see what actually happens. But I wouldn't expect bikes to be respecting. That's all. The other thing is that the children who go, and adults who go down the street without helmets on their scooters and their bikes at full speed is also terrifying to me, because there are people who will be backing out of their driveways. That's my vote for not having it go one way in the other direction. It would have to be uphill.
Okay. Thank you, Vanessa. Margie, and then Kumar Vaswani.
Hi.
And we might close down after that, and I'll let Andrew come in after Kumar Vaswani. Margie, go ahead.
Mayor, can Vicky have one more comment too, real quick, afterwards?
Yeah, Vicky, you can come in after Kumar Vaswani. So Margie, followed by Kumar.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to echo the concern about the trucks. I think that they really are the big danger to cars and pedestrians alike. If you move the map over, we're at the top of Cumberland, right on the alley, and the trucks come through that alley at speeds that are terrifying. I park in the alley. It's terrifying every day. And I've called the town hall about it. I've called the police about it. I've even called Google Maps to try to get them, because there are signs that say no trucks, but nobody listens. And I've tried, they're on Google Maps as a throughway, and I can't get it changed. So I definitely think that maybe the pedestrian troubles at the bottom are due to these trucks, and I have not found a way to fix that. So I definitely think that should be part of your calculation. They don't honor the time. They don't honor the sign that says no trucks. They just tear through there. So
I'm sorry, Margie, are you talking about the alley by the school or down at
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
the Warwick Alley.
alley. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And so when it is open, it's very dangerous.
Yes.
So anyway, that's all I wanted to share. I think that should go into your calculus somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kumar, followed by Vicky.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a question for Paul Dorr. What's the recommended width for a walkway or sidewalk under the ADA rules?
So an accessible path can be as narrow as 3 feet, but it would need passing. Again, this is something that we're trying to help be a solution. You can have a 3-foot accessible ADA path, but you would need passing areas, say every 100 or 2 foot, every 200 feet. In the event you had 2 wheelchairs, which I don't really think you're going to have on Cumberland. But if it was wider, we could do, like you said, 4 or 5 feet. And we can even look at possibly moving a curb a foot or 2 in where we're not impacting tree roots. So there's some things we can look at in order to make that accessible path a little bit wider. That's a good point.
Because we've always been told that the PROAG, the public right-of-way access guidelines, say 4 feet for an outdoor walkway. I know there's 3 feet like for an interior hallway or maybe in a parking lot, but
okay,
just a regular sidewalk, we've always been told it's 4 feet.
Yeah, a sidewalk, I agree.
Flush
any
that
new
out.
any new project, we're doing a 5-foot sidewalk, or a hiker biker's 8-foot wide. But again, we're trying to squeeze in an accessible path just to get pedestrians out of the vehicle way. But yeah, Kumar, I will confirm that, and we can look at just moving the road edge a foot or 2, as long as it doesn't impact tree roots. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kumar. Vicky?
Hi, thank you. Just a couple quick things. I would like Paul and his team to let us know if more speed bumps would help, because as I think Chris mentioned, I think added speed bumps and even lowering, I know the speed limit's already pretty low, but maybe lowering it further, and maybe this would work on Warwick Lane as well, I don't know, but some of those signs with flashing lights that show, what the speed limit is something that's more visible, like we have that flashing stop sign on Dorset across from Big Surrey, or, something like that. And I would be in favor of the steps at Cumberland and Surrey, even if they couldn't. I mean, I'm in favor of all the ADA requirements, but if that weren't possible, if we could just widen them and make them safer, because even just walking on for someone who's not in a wheelchair, they are not safe anyway. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, I'm going to give you the last word before I close things.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, everyone. This has been really insightful, and I'm pleased to hear everybody share what they have to say. I think there's more here. There's more perspectives that I'd want to gather, and I'm happy to follow the directions of the voice of Vox Populi. So it strikes me that there's more work to do. As a power wheelchair user, I am forced into the street in Lower Cumberland. So put me into the camp of not entirely feeling safe, and so. What I'm really excited about is, as I heard this conversation move along, I heard a sense of possibilities. And what strikes me is that this offers a new possibility for our town, a new way to do things where we can come together and talk about it. It takes a little bit longer. But I think, it's an exciting step forward. And I think this is one, paint can away from doing something kind of fun and interesting, and we see what happens with it. And I'm more than happy to meet and resume the nature walks that I was giving along the lower Cumberland area to help clue people in, and can resume those very quickly this week or next week. I'm around all summer. So I think that this is a great first step or second step or whatever step we're on. And I'm happy to continue talking and working with my neighbors.
Thanks, Andrew. So let me just close out. As Andrew said, this is not the end. We are going to continue to reach out to all of you. We'll have a lot more opportunity to keep talking about different options, different ideas. My view is that doing nothing is probably not an option. Maybe that's where we'll end up anyway, but I hope that we can keep talking about finding a way that improves safety, and yet at the same time recognizing all the different concerns that all of you have raised. And I think, I think Paul would agree with me that all the different, things that people have raised about the one way or the where the parking is going to be located, the issues of Devon, and so on. I think these are all things that I'm sure the traffic group team will appreciate hearing from all of you. And I think we also heard that there are other ideas out there, more speed bumps, other traffic calming measures, possibly regulating trucks, other heavy vehicles. So Paul, put that into the blender. And think about these things as well. I think that I will just close out by saying a few things. One is, I hear what everyone has said about data and empirical evidence, and some people have talked about manufactured problems and intuition and so on. As I said, I don't accept that this is all manufactured or that we're driven by people's intuition. There's more than enough empirical evidence that vehicles and people in the same space is dangerous. And I hope that we're not in a place where we are saying that the only data point that will satisfy us is when there is an accident. Because I don't know what else the data point is that people are looking for. So I think that, but that said, I think Paul, we should really look at all the traffic flow information, and figure out really whether there are other options for traffic calming and regulation that would serve the community better. As Andrew said earlier, we're not driven by engineers and consultants. We're driven by the community. And at the end of the day, what goes forward or doesn't depend on your voices. And that's the voice of Cumberland, of Dorset, Surrey, and all of Somerset. I heard someone say, if you don't feel Cumberland is safe, don't walk Cumberland. Or in Andrew's case, don't roll on Cumberland. I don't think that's neighborly. I think that everybody should be able to walk on any part of Somerset. We're all neighbors, and the community belongs to all of us. And Andrew, just like anybody else, should feel safe on every street. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. At the end of the day, a solution will require trade-offs, and we have to figure out which is the trade-off that we can live with, which is the trade-off with the least cost, and I think that's what we're trying. And I can give you my assurance that there will be more conversations like this. We're not going to go with a proposal once and for all. And so those of you who are concerned about this, my reassurance is that we will continue to talk. We will continue to seek feedback. I don't think we'll spend money endlessly on this. At some point, we will take the decision that enough is enough, and maybe there is no pathway to a different Cumberland. Maybe that's where we'll end up, and that's what we'll have to live with. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for taking the time. Thanks, Paul, for joining us. Thanks, Andrew. You did an amazing job of collecting the views of a large number of residents over several weeks. And to me, that, when people ask what's driving this, obviously that initial letter from residents started it. But, Andrew really took the time and made the effort to reach out to so many of our neighbors to really try to understand what we could do to improve safety. And I really appreciate that, Andrew. And I think, as you rightly said, there's a lot of things for us to think through here. More outreach is needed. Paul, you've got a lot of feedback from the community, and we will discuss further. So anyway, thanks very much, everybody. I think 2 hours on this was a good time slot. And have a good evening, everyone. And again, thanks so much for giving your perspectives. I really appreciate it. So have a good evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.